Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Superheroes, Movies, and Superhero Movies. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzel.
And if you are just listening to this episode, you should go over to our YouTube channel and check it out, because I'm wearing a Batman mask right now, and that needs to be seen, especially with the headphones. It looks kind of ridiculous. But I thought it was
a very good quality Batman mask at that.
Thank you. It's one of my prized possessions, I guess. I need to figure out a good way to display it, but yeah, I'm not going to wear it for very long because it is actually pretty warm, and I feel like it looks a little ridiculous with the headphones on the actual mask. So I'm going to take it off now, but I thought it was appropriate for this movie. So hold on a second. All right.
I was going to say, you're also wearing a Zack Snyder's Justice League shirt.
I am. Another prized possession. I got this before they even announced that the movie was going to be released. It was it's kind of a fundraiser that I think Zack Snyder did to raise money for suicide prevention and awareness. And so I bought the shirt to help that cause, and it came, and I love it. It's awesome. And one of the best things, it's got all the logos on the shoulder or on the sleeve here, if you can see it.
Right.
Superman, Batman.
Does it have Green Lantern on there?
It does have Green Lantern. Yeah. And then on this side, you got Martian Manhunter, Cyborg, Flash, and Aquaman. So pretty cool.
So you said you had that shirt since before they announced that they were going to do it. So I would say that your level of excitement for the fact finding out that they were actually going to do this, like, wow, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
Like, I was excited about it too. But for you to be like buying
T-shirts
before
they even announced it, yeah,
you were one of the pioneers that could maybe take credit for helping get this on the ground.
Yeah, I'd like to think so. You know, I did my small part. You know, I know there were people who did a lot more than I did, but yeah, I have always said, ever since the theatrical version came out, and, you know, we didn't do our normal little intro here. We're talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League, of course, directed by Zack Snyder, obviously, and written by Chris Terrio, from a story by Will Beall, Zack Snyder, and Chris Terrio, and starring everybody that's in Justice League and Batman vs. Superman and Man of Steel. So, anyway, when the theatrical version came out, and we kind of realized that the reshoots were not great, and the CG Henry Cavill face looked terrible, I'd always kind of thought, for better or worse, whether it's a better movie or a worse movie, I just wanted to see the original cut. You know, I just wanted to see what Zack Snyder was wanting to make. And part of the reason for that was because the theatrical version of Justice League just didn't feel connected to Batman vs. Superman or Man of Steel. It just felt like a movie that belonged in a different trilogy, you know, different, not quite different universe, but it just didn't feel connected. And I wanted to see what Zack Snyder had in mind. And you know, part of it was that scene from Batman vs. Superman where Flash shows up, and then, you know, he's talking to Bruce from the future. We didn't quite see that in this movie, but I just wanted they just completely ignored it in the theatrical version.
They kind of bring it up here.
They do bring it up. So yeah, when back in 2017, before this movie was released theatrically, it was my most anticipated movie of that year. I was more excited about Justice League than I was The Last Jedi. So knowing that Zack Snyder's Justice League was getting released, I was pretty pumped. I would have taken a day off work to watch this movie if I could have, but it's kind of like a blackout time at my job, so I couldn't quite do that.
I don't know if there has ever been a movie that I've been more excited for than The Last Jedi.
Understandably so.
Because it was Luke Skywalker.
Sure.
And that's why I was excited about Force Awakens. And of course we just get him being handed the lightsaber, and one of the most intense cliffhangers or extreme cliffhangers that I have ever experienced. Probably the worst, I'd say.
But that is why.
But exciting too.
I loved the ending of Force Awakens. And
me too.
Because I think you and I both were wondering, not to talk about Star Wars during the Justice League episode here, but we were wondering, why isn't Luke in any of the trailers and stuff? And then as soon as you see the crawl, Force Awakens, it says the very first line is Luke Skywalker has vanished, and you're like, oh my gosh. And so seeing him at the very end was amazing. And then because we got to see no Luke Skywalker in Force Awakens, everybody was pumped about seeing Last Jedi.
Right.
And I was too. I was super pumped, but I was real pumped about seeing Justice League. I just could not wait. And I was I was disappointed by the theatrical version. So now finally
to hear you say that. Well, you know what though? That's interesting. I wonder, because I don't think that was your original, like, what your review, your rating.
I know, yeah,
was big. So I wonder if now that you've seen, what was intended from Snyder, you're like, the theatrical, it's awful.
I know when we talked about Justice League in our podcast that I did say that, like, I it was a superhero movie, and just like almost every superhero movie, I am pretty excited about it originally. And then depending on the quality of the movie, it fades out a little bit. And that was the case with Justice League. I do remember walking out of the theater being slightly disappointed because it was not what I was expecting, and they didn't talk about some of the stuff that happened in Batman vs. Superman, and it didn't feel like it was really connected. But I was still excited because I was seeing some of these characters on the big screen for the first time, like The Flash and Aquaman and Cyborg and stuff.
Right.
So, I mean, I did go see Justice League like 3 times in the theater.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember my dad asking me how it was, and I said it was good. And my dad goes, "Oh man, it must be terrible then." He's like, normally you'd be like, "It was amazing," and and I was just like, "Yeah, it was good."
Right.
But I went and saw it with him, and he actually really liked it. And so I was like, "All right, whatever." But but especially now that this Zack Snyder's version has come out, I think that movie is trash.
So here's the deal. I think I've seen theatrical Justice League twice. And no. I can't remember if I saw it once or twice when we did the podcast. It seems like I've watched it twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had. But I don't remember really anything in that movie except maybe 2 or 3 scenes in this that I knew were from the original, and I'm assuming there's probably more in this that was in the theatrical than that.
Yeah, I mean there's definitely stuff that's in this movie that was in the theatrical version. It was either stuff was added to those scenes for the theatrical version, or stuff was way cut out.
Because to me, this was, from what I remembered, this was almost like 75% new content.
Yeah, pretty much was.
Okay.
I remember hearing, and I remember thinking, there's no way. And I still don't think it's quite this much, but I remember hearing that only about 10% of what Zack Snyder had shot ended up in the theatrical version. And I still don't think that's quite true, because I think if Joss Whedon had directed 90% of the movie, Joss Whedon would have gotten a director's credit. I just feel like that, would have... It's like Superman 2. Richard Donner was taken off of Superman 2. They brought in Richard Lester. And Richard Lester had to include, X amount of scenes or X amount of minutes worth of stuff he had directed in order to get the director's credit. And so unless Joss Whedon was just kind of told up front, you're not going to get a director's credit, and I don't know if they can do that with the Directors Guild. I don't know what the rules would be with that. I don't know. So I just didn't buy that. But having watched it now, I don't know. I know, it might be only 25% of the movie ended up in the theatrical version.
Either that, or Zack Snyder didn't include some of the stuff that was in the theatrical that was his also.
Right, maybe.
But I agree. I'm like, so much of this felt like I had never seen it before.
Right.
So I'm trying to remember some of the scenes, like the arrow. Was that in the original?
They shoot, the Amazons shoot the arrow, and it lands in the that whatever I don't remember what they call that building, but that ancient Greek thing, and she sees it burning, But then that's it. Like you don't see Wonder Woman going there and finding the history of Darkseid and all that stuff.
Yeah, I remember. I knew that was new, but I could because the only thing I remembered from that was her turning and seeing the news. Yeah. And that whole like exchange she had with that guy where she was like, "I'm a boring person."
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So that's where they cut it off. Basically, she sees it on the news and she goes invasion. And then I think the next time we see Wonder Woman, she's going to see Bruce Wayne to tell him, there's not an attack coming. It's already here. Which I'm not entirely sure that line is in the theatrical version, but she gives him in the theatrical version. She gives him the history of Steppenwolf rather than Darkseid.
Right.
So that's a new scene.
Yes, this was much more satisfying.
Oh, so much more. Even though it is a long movie, it was immensely satisfying.
Yeah, and with that statement, I would say I don't think you could really cut out anything. You'd have to make this 2 movies if you wanted to do that because there was nothing in this movie that felt like it was filler.
I agree. No, I agree. There's very little that I would have trimmed down. I remember thinking like in the second time I watched it, in the beginning when Batman and Aquaman are talking and he swims off, there's like the Icelandic women singing. I was like, maybe I would have trimmed that a little bit, but honestly, it doesn't even go on that long. So it's not like it's this really extended sequence where you're like, oh my gosh, let's move on. There's not much you could really trim from this. So it's in a way like I hate the fact that, Zack Snyder essentially got the movie taken away from him. I'm thankful that we got this version of it.
Yeah, after seeing this, it is insane how different. Like this literally is a completely different movie.
Yeah.
I didn't know that it would be able to be done like that. I was expecting kind of like an upgraded version of the theatrical version.
I gotcha.
And yeah, just with how much footage that they had and were able to do with the story, it blew me away.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm really glad that yeah, you're right. They took it from him because the theatrical version was not this at all.
No, not at all. And I think unfortunately, Zack Snyder's daughter committed suicide, and he talked about how he kind of threw himself headfirst, or dove into his work because he thought maybe working would
distract him
a bit, pain. And maybe be the right thing. And he said he found out later that he just didn't have the fight in him. He was having to fight the studio over so much creative decisions and everything that he finally just was like, it's not worth it. He's like, like in the grand scheme of things and what he was going through at the time, it was just fighting with the studio was just pointless to him. So he left, and they brought Joss Whedon in. And I can just imagine the conversations, how, that went. They were like, okay, we've got this. I don't think it was quite 4 hours at the time, but they've got this huge movie, and they wanted Joss Whedon to cut it down to 2 hours. And so he reshot a bunch of stuff, and like, I rewatched a little bit of the theatrical version just because I was curious about some stuff. And like, and Cyborg kind of he talks about his backstory a little bit, and he just kind of glosses over it,
So here's the thing I remember. I don't really remember Cyborg being that much of a character in the original theatrical version. Am I right on that?
I mean, he was a major part of the team, but he does not have the story that he's got.
Like his story is like almost I would say it's the biggest branch off of the main story.
Yeah.
It's
he really is. Zack Snyder has said that he's like the heart of this movie, and I like.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah,
he and Superman.
Yeah.
But yeah, Cyborg's story was. I loved how they did it. I thought it was really well done, interesting, and important to the whole scheme of things.
Mm-hmm.
And because it dealt with his father, by the way, who was the scientist, dealing with the mother box. But by the way, I looked it up. That was what I was looking up before we started to see who played
Dr. Silas Stone.
Yes, because the whole movie, I was like, I
He
am
looks so familiar.
95% sure that is the guy from Terminator 2.
Yeah, it is. Yep.
And I pulled it up and I was like, yes. Yeah. His performance is amazing.
Yeah.
He was one of my favorite characters in the movie.
Yeah, and he's, I mean, and again,
and he has such a big role.
Yes, he was basically a lead character.
Yeah.
Whereas in the theatrical version, he's
right.
in a couple of scenes. You know what I mean? It's like nothing. And so yeah, I loved seeing more of his character. I loved seeing all those scenes with him working at the Kryptonian ship. And you got Ryan Choi in there, who that name sounded super familiar to me, and I looked it up, and he becomes the Atom in the comics. He's like the third. He's like, I guess the Atom has had a few people kind of take the mantle of the Atom, and he's one of them. So that was kind of a little cool Easter egg. Because they even say at the end of the movie, you know, he's the director of nanotechnology or something like that. And he's like, yep, that's me. That's my thing or something like that. So, yeah. So yeah, I loved seeing all those scenes. I loved the tape recorder, you know, that he records, and like you see Cyborg's kind of backstory as his dad is narrating. And then the narration at the end too, when Cyborg puts the tape recorder back and he hears like it's that. I loved those scenes. Those scenes were so good.
Yeah. Yes, the way that Cyborg turned out, his story and how everything was portrayed and just ended up, I was super happy with it. It almost, like, I remember thinking, I wish they had done a Cyborg movie and told us this, but at the same time, I love how it just fits so well in this story that I would keep it that way.
I do too, and I loved, you know, jumping all over the place here. I loved how his character arc basically is just so good, because he's upset about this, you know, monster that he's become, and at the end the mother boxes are trying to kind of persuade him. They're like, you know, we can put you back together, we can make you whole, and his line of "I'm not broken and I'm not alone." That was just so like that powerful to me.
And who plays?
That's Ray Fisher.
Ray Fisher. So his acting is pretty amazing too, because that was actually one of the notes I wrote before seeing how he transforms later. Is how I wrote down that I liked the kind of depressed, moody personality that he had, because it kind of mirrored a robot.
Yeah.
You know, because when you're depressed like that and you just don't care about anything, it's basically like you're emotionless. You're just kind of have numbed your emotion. And I felt like with that, he felt like a robot as we're being introduced to him. So I wrote that down. And then later by the end of the movie, you just see he's become human almost at heart. And he's happy. And the way that Ray Fisher portrayed that, he did a really good job of transitioning from the dark to the light.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. Unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get to see much more of Ray Fisher's Cyborg, because I don't know if you've kept up with any of this, but Ray Fisher has been very vocal about Joss Whedon and he said he was basically abusive and racist and whatever on the set of Justice League, and he has said it's not only Joss Whedon, but some of the people at Warner Brothers /TC. And so he's called them out publicly and whatnot, and he was supposed to be in the new upcoming Flash movie, and he is not anymore. So he doesn't seem to really care that he's, I mean, obviously it's got to hurt to not be in the movie anymore, but he, you know, feels like what he is fighting for is important, and feels like it's more important than whether or not he's in a movie. So he's still pushing to get justice, pun somewhat intended, for what has happened, you know, what they went through on Justice League and everything. So, because also one of the things, if you go back and watch the theatrical version of Justice League, he is not as angry. He's a little depressed in the beginning, but he does not come across nearly as angry as he does in the beginning of this version.
Right. And
he's understandably angry. I mean, it's like has been turned into this
Yeah,
machine.
he feels like he blames his mom's death on his dad. And then not only that, but his dad brings him back to life to continue to feel the pain.
Yeah.
Of losing his mom. And stay here with this guy that he feels like never cared for him or gave him the time of day.
Right.
So yeah, I could, and he's not a human anymore. Like
right.
he's an outcast. So yeah, he has a lot to be angry about for sure.
Sure.
And it was, encouraging to see how he did kind of get to open his eyes, because his dad maybe, obviously was very busy with work, but he loved his son, and Victor was unfortunately blind to that.
Right.
And as he opens up, he kind of investigates,
sees it,
and finds out that his dad did love him.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's one of those things where there were so many times watching this movie, and again, I know that Joss Whedon, I don't know exactly what happened, obviously, behind the closed doors at Warner Brothers or anything, but I feel like Joss Whedon was given a tough, he was paid for it and he agreed to do it, but he was given a tough job, which is to cut this movie down to 2 hours. And watching the movie, there were so many times where I'm going, how could you cut that out? Like, right. How could you change the scene?
Not only that, but I'm assuming that after Zack left, the studio was like, well, everything we were fighting on him about, we now get to do, because it's our decision. So they basically, I'm assuming, went to Joss and said, here's the story now. This is what we're doing. And like, how much creative control did he have after that?
That's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I do feel like they went to Joss Whedon for a reason. He did the Avengers, and the Avengers was huge.
Right.
And I do feel like they wanted more humor in the movie. So I feel like they went to Joss Whedon and they said, here's all the stuff that this is all the stuff we've been fighting with Zack Snyder about. So this is what you are going to change. And then we also want you to add more humor to the film.
I just thought of something. Was it just me, or was the first half of the movie pretty heavy on humor still?
It did still have some humor in it.
Yes. But later, the second half, I felt like there wasn't much, and it was really just focusing on the story. And I'm bringing that up mainly because I wonder how I'd feel about going back and watching it, but I do know that the first, hour and a half to 2 hours of this movie, I was not on board.
With the humor?
The movie.
Or just the movie at all?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And a lot of it was the humor, because there were so many lines where I was just like it feels so forced. It's just not, even sometimes funny jokes, if they feel forced, aren't funny.
Right.
And I was experiencing that, but then somewhere I remember around the halfway mark, I was watching, and it just kept having beat after beat of things that I liked. And eventually, to where about 3/4 of the way through the movie, I was this is actually pretty good. I'm actually enjoying this. So, but you bring up the comedy. I remember thinking though that it seemed like the humor kind of, they didn't focus on humor for the second half of the movie.
No, I think you're right, and I think it is appropriate. You know what I mean? Because they were focused on stopping Steppenwolf and bringing Superman back and stuff like that. So it was, I think the humor, there's less humor in the second half of the movie. I think you're right. I will say, none of the humor really bothered me. There's only one moment where it felt super forced to me, and I remember thinking while I was watching, I was like, John's not gonna like this scene. And it was actually Flash's introduction when he goes to the doggy daycare to apply for that job, and he's just talking. He's like, the bus wasn't there, and then the bus was there, and there's a lady, and she's counting change, nickel penny, and it just wasn't that funny.
Mhm.
And then like he pulls his resume out of his pocket and he's like what
Right.
lives in my pocket? Like Paper Monster Hungry. And I was like, oh gosh. Like
To
that
me,
was the
when
only
he-
part that was like kind of groan worthy.
To me, and this is where I was nitpicking everything, and I remember he pulled it out, and I'm like, why would, if you're trying to get a job,
Yeah,
you're
why
taking
would-
your
yeah.
resume, why is it in your pocket, folded up, all crinkled?
Right.
There
But
was
then-
actually a funny note that I wrote
Okay.
about that scene was when the girl, who is that?
That's
what-
Iris West.
Yes, Iris, because I didn't watch the show, so, but I
Gotcha.
knew it's who it was. I just couldn't remember her name. Iris West. She's
She's never actually mentioned. Her name is never mentioned in
Right.
the movie. So if
I just
mean,
knew who I knew that was like his love interest.
Right. Yeah.
And anyway, so she's in that accident and she's like they're doing the slow motion, and her face is so calm and peaceful
Yeah,
because
I
it's
know.
supposed to be this romantic
Yeah.
moment that he's having. But I was thinking how funny it would have been if they had actually had her accurate face, and he's like, you're trying to do this scene with him like admiring her.
And she's just like,
Terrified.
yeah. I
Couldn't
thought
do
that
it.
too. Actually,
Couldn't do
I thought that too. The first time I watched, I like that. I love that scene. That's what I was gonna say. But like, you've got that not great scene of humor at the doggy daycare place, but then the accident happens, and I love when that music actually started playing. Those first couple of piano notes, I thought it was gonna be that My Chemical Romance song, the Black
Helena?
Parade or whatever.
Oh,
it is,
yeah.
you know. And I was like, oh really? But then it was a completely different song, and I was like, oh, this song's actually cool. I just don't think that My Chemical Romance song would have fit that scene.
I agree.
But anyway, I really like that scene a lot, but I did think about that the first time I watched it. Was he's moving her hair, and I'm like, you're like, oh, this is a cool scene. I was like, but that is not the face that she would be making flying out of the car. Also, I guess she's not wearing her seatbelt there, so
Right.
she needs to learn to buckle up.
Maybe she will this time.
Maybe, yeah. Well, hopefully now she'll have learned her lesson. Although I don't know, maybe she, if she had been buckled up, maybe she would have. I mean, Flash probably could have unbuckled her and gotten her out of the car, but
Yeah, I would imagine.
she wouldn't have flown
So-
out, so she would have been in the car flipping over or whatever.
Yeah. He there's a scene, I don't remember what he was doing, but I remember thinking this shouldn't be any problem because they have the Flash, and he literally can go trip all these people.
Yeah,
Anyway. Got to have some excitement there.
yeah. That's one of the problems with like superhero movies, especially like Superman, and like with the old Superman movies, where Superman is literally flying around the Earth,
Right.
within seconds.
Right, so he could just reset anything.
Yeah, that, and also I know, and I granted him flying around the Earth happens after Lois Lane dies, but the whole problem in the movie is that Lex Luthor has sent rockets going in two different directions, and even him with his great speed will never catch them both in time. But if he had just pushed himself, he could have obviously done it if he can fly around the Earth that fast. So
Yeah.
you kind of have inconsistencies sometimes with
Right.
when you kind of make your superheroes that powerful. And that's the same thing with Flash. Like if he can run so fast, if he can run at the speed of light or faster than the speed of light, then he should be able to. I mean, there was a scene where he gets, and granted he's a little distracted, but he gets shot with
Right.
one of the parademon guns, and you're like, how did that happen? He should have heard the blast and looked over and moved out of the way. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
But-
literally everything is going so slow for him that it's literally frozen. So, not literally, but
I couldn't help but laugh though when he's moving Iris's hair. She's floating through the air in super slow motion. He's moving her hair, and then he looks over and he sees a hot dog. And at first, I had no idea why. I thought he was saving it for later, for himself. He sees a hot dog and he smiles and puts it in his pocket. That part just kind of made me laugh. And then when you see that it's actually for the dogs at the end, I was like, okay, that's actually pretty smart.
So the most cringeworthy line he had for me,
Yeah.
I believe, was, or at least new line, was, unless it was in the original, I don't remember. I don't think it was though. But when he and Diane meet,
And he says, "Hi, Diane," or "Hi, Barry. I'm Diane."
yeah,
Or Diana.
Was that new?
Actually,
yeah, Diane.
no, that was actually in the theatrical cut, and that was one of the scenes I was going to point out because that scene, I assumed was a Whedon scene from the theatrical version, because the humor feels more like some of the Whedon humor in the rest of that movie.
To me, it doesn't feel like Whedon humor. It feels like someone trying to do Whedon humor.
Well, that could be. But also directly after that, where he goes, "Oh, the bat signal. That's your signal.
Right.
That means we got to go." That I agree is not the best humor either. It feels a little forced, and so that's why I just assumed that whole scene was a reshoot, but it wasn't. It was actually, that was part of the Snyder cut. But it's such a short scene, it doesn't really bother me. I actually do like the line, "Hi Barry, I'm Diana." Wait, that's not right.
To me, like, it just felt, I'm like, Barry's not, he's a really intelligent guy. And
he is very intelligent, yes.
For someone to make that mistake, or constantly the level of stupidity that he's doing, I'm like, there's no way. There's no way.
My favorite line, and I don't know if you liked it at all, but my favorite line is in the tunnel scene, and the people are, I think Batman tells him, get these people out of here, So him and Cyborg are like helping the people go up the steps to get to outside, and he, Flash is kind of just zipping along, and at one point he goes, "A little quicker, people."
Yeah,
and that part just kind of made me laugh.
Yeah,
because like you said, he's probably. I mean, when he's not in the Speed Force, I assume everything is normal to him, but they probably just feel like it probably feels like people just move very slowly to him, because I don't know if he always experiences time a little bit that way, or if it's just when he like kind of triggers the Speed
I don't
Force.
think he could. How would he wouldn't be able to have conversations with
true.
people.
Well, that's another thing that like is far-fetched, but we accept it. He's at the end of the movie, he's running close to the speed of light and communicating with Cyborg. So, he's yelling at Cyborg, I can't maintain this. But if he was moving that fast, I don't think, Cyborg is...
I was going to say
Cyborg might actually be able to interpret it, I guess you could say.
Because, he's got like a computer ability to
that's
where...
True.
Yeah, I'll give him that. But yeah, as far as like I like Ezra Miller and his act. I think he appears like, to me, he's a good actor.
Oh, yeah.
But there are just some of those, like I said early on, the lines, I just wasn't a big fan of them.
I got you.
And just the decisions that, like, you remember, like when I don't remember who they were waving to, or who they were talking to. It might have been Silas, but Flash like waves like to the guy, like, really. I personally, here's what I was gonna say. I understand that they need to give each character a different personality. Batman obviously has an established personality of he's the serious Bruce Wayne. Superman has kind of a set personality too. Flash, who's being introduced to an audience kind of for the first time. Yes, we had the TV show, we have comic book readers, but for the theatrical, like,
yeah, no.
So they decided to make him a bumbling teenager, and I think I would have preferred, because I know they need some comic relief, and he's the character they choose. But you could have done it more with, I think, instead of a questioning like teenager, you could have done like a snarky, I know everything because I'm so smart. So he could have had more of a, I guess, sarcastic humor.
Right.
And I think that might have fit better. Who knows?
Yeah, I don't know. You never know. Like I said, I don't mind it at all. I think the only scene that really kind of is cringeworthy to me is just that his first scene where he's at the dog park or doggy daycare, and he's pulling out his resume and stuff. That part I was just kind of like, ooh. But I don't mind it. He's waving to Alfred. I think that's what it was. When they first go to the Batcave.
Right. It was in the Batcave. Yep.
And Batman says that great line where he goes, "This is Alfred. I work for him."
Yeah.
But I was also thinking, you were talking about all the different personalities, and I think they did need to make Flash kind of the lighter character.
Yes, they did.
You're right. He didn't have to necessarily be kind of. I wouldn't call him stupid or anything, but like he does.
No,
because
he's not stupid.
Go ahead.
It's like, it's just, you wouldn't call. Okay, finish what you were saying. I want to.
Well, I was just gonna say you've got Aquaman, who's kind of angry and you've got Cyborg, who's definitely angry, and then you've got Batman, who's more, mostly a serious character, and then Wonder Woman, who is kind of
she's
serious,
like kind of the
serious,
glue.
but
she's like
approachable.
I gotta keep everyone,
yeah,
together and kind of knit.
Right.
Almost like the mother character, I guess, a little bit of the team.
Yeah. So it makes sense to me that, they make Flash the comic relief and make him kind of the way they made him. But you're right, he didn't have to necessarily be as goofy maybe as he is, kind of. But like I said, it doesn't bother me at all.
It's not the goofiness, it's just the fact that you have to wonder how he could be so just clueless. Is all it is.
Yeah, I kind of like to think he's like got ADD or something, and part of it is just his brain probably moves just as fast. And
yeah, no, that's a great point.
Yeah,
that's a great point.
Because I wondered if you cringed at this line too, but I actually like this line too, where they finally get all the people out to. Oh, and I love that scene too. They get everybody out of the tunnel, and Barry sees the falling debris, and you see him moving really quickly above those people's heads, stopping all those rocks and everything. That was in the trailer, and I couldn't tell what was going on in that, and so it was actually really cool seeing that scene. But after Cyborg comes up, he's like, "Get back in the tunnel," and Barry says, I'm not going to get the line exactly right, but he's like, "Right, tunnel, bad guys, sword lady," or something like that, and he goes back in there. That line actually made me laugh too, but I wondered if you didn't like that.
Speaking of sword lady, one of my favorite scenes or moments in the movie, it's very quick, is when he is going. What do you call it when time slows down for him? Is there a term?
Force.
Speed Force.
Well, he goes into the Speed Force.
So he's like in the Speed Force, and she's trying to get her sword.
Yeah.
And then he runs around and taps it.
Yeah, just kind of pushes it back towards her.
That might be my second favorite favorite moment in the movie, as far as just enjoying seeing it.
Yeah.
Behind another Speed Force moment, which is
at
where
the end.
What?
Oh, go ahead. Well, explain your favorite Speed
Force. It's
moment.
when he's circling around Superman, and Superman's eyes dart over to him.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
That is my favorite moment still in the movie, because that's what it was theatrical, and it still is.
The music is different in that scene, and I want to talk about the music, but it's still a great scene. And Ezra Miller's face is fantastic.
Yeah,
because he's never met anybody as fast as him. You know what I mean? So seeing Superman look over with just his eyes, it's still a pretty powerful moment.
Yeah, and he's still faster than Superman,
right?
Because he's able to dodge.
Mm-hmm.
And they did a really good job showing. But Superman's really close to his speed.
Yeah,
because Superman's swinging at him, and he's missing, but he's close.
Not by much. Right. There's a cool Easter egg in that scene, by the way, when Flash. I didn't notice it. It was pointed out online. So I don't know if you noticed it, but when Flash kind of stumbles after dodging Superman's fists and falls back against one of those monuments that has all the people's names on it, one of the names is actually a Marvel reference. It's Ben Parker.
Oh, wow!
One of the names on the
No, I didn't. Definitely did not pick up on that.
I didn't pick that up either, but I thought that was kind of cool. That I'm assuming it wasn't an accident. And they threw in a Spider-Man reference in there. But my favorite Speed Force moment is at the very end, right after the three mother boxes synchronize and the unity happens, and it shows everything kind of goes white, and Barry is not with the rest of the team. He's out because he was circling to create that charge, and he puts his hand out and basically goes into the Speed Force, and everything is kind of dissolving around him. And he has to run faster than the speed of light to reverse time. The music in that scene and the way he's kind of talking to himself, / talking to his dad,
right?
That I just love that. It's one of my favorite moments in the whole movie. I love that scene.
It was good, and I remember thinking that too. That was another moment where I was like, this movie still has been holding up for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
So I was pretty excited where it was going. One of the notes I do have, speaking of Speed Force, and it's not just the Speed Force moments, but Zack Snyder definitely has a thing for slow motion.
Yes, he does. And I remember thinking this years ago when he was announced that he was going to be the director of Man of Steel. I remember thinking, like, do I really want to see a Superman movie that's just nonstop slow motion? And he actually doesn't use it either at all or barely in Man of Steel. Like, I don't really remember very many slow motion scenes at all in Man of Steel.
Pretty fast paced as far as all the action goes.
And then he used some in Batman vs Superman, and then he uses quite a bit in this movie. But it's kind of his signature style. He likes the slow motion.
I had forgotten, and then there was a scene in here. Oh, it was probably the history of Darkseid, because Zeus is in that, which honestly I was not a fan of.
Yeah,
because he just reminded me of 300. And
that's funny that you said that, because I remember thinking, like, who was it? Denise mentioned that it should have been
Gerard Butler.
No, not Gerard Butler, but another actor who I can't think of now. But I remember thinking, I was like, you know what? I don't know if Zack Snyder's ever worked with that actor, whoever she mentioned. But I was like, he could. I wonder if he could have gotten like Gerard Butler. But I think the way he was dressed, people probably would have thought it was Leonidas from 300. Instead of Zeus.
But because of that, I remembered, and I was thinking, I was like, oh yeah, he does. I was like, in fact, that was it. It's been so long, and I bet a lot of people don't even remember this. But when 300 came out, they might remember it being groundbreaking, but one of the things that really stood out from 300 was the combat sequences, because of the way that Zack Snyder used the speeding up and then going to slow motion. And we had never really seen a presentation like that before.
Yeah. I remember being blown away by 300.
Yeah, it was really...
I thought 300 was amazing. I have not watched it in a long time, and there's a part of me that thinks I won't enjoy it as much anymore.
Right.
Because it has been... It's like kind of like... Well, I probably will enjoy it, but I was going to say it's kind of like The Matrix, where The Matrix was so good and people started kind of copying The Matrix to the point where, like, that stuff kind of almost became cliche. That's how I almost feel about 300. Like, will I still enjoy 300 as much? Because so many people kind of copied that style of filmmaking and everything. And but I do remember I went and saw that movie a couple times in the theater. I thought that was incredible. That might have been the first. I can't remember if I saw Dawn of the Dead before 300 or not, but I was going to say that might be the first Zack Snyder movie I saw. But I know I saw Dawn of the Dead, not in theaters, but I rented it on DVD and was really impressed with Dawn of the Dead.
Dawn of the Dead was very overhyped for me. I'm pretty sure I saw it before 300, and I didn't even know it was Zack Snyder. And then I went and saw 300, and was blown away by 300, and noted who the director was.
Yeah.
And then found out that he was doing Watchmen, and I was awesome.
Yeah. I would say I'm a fan of Zack Snyder. I have not seen his animated movie, The Legends of the Guardians, Owls of Ga'Hoole.
Right.
But the only movie of his that I was not a huge fan of, and I've only seen the theatrical version, because there is like I don't know if it's a director's cut or just an extended version or whatever you would call it, but is Sucker Punch. That was the only one that I just wasn't super...
Yeah, I had no interest in Sucker Punch. I haven't seen it.
I saw it and I thought I've only seen it the one time. I saw it in the theater, and it just felt to me like kind of watching your friend play a video game. It was like one boss fight after another kind of thing, and it just felt kind of repetitive to me. It didn't do a whole lot for me. I liked the cinematography of it and stuff, and his sequences were cool, but as a whole, it just didn't work for me.
Right.
But like I said, I have not watched that movie since, so I don't know. Maybe my opinion might change if I rewatch it or watch the extended version. But pretty much all of his other movies I've really enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, until seeing this, I would have said that, Justice League was the theatrical version was one of his falling points, and not necessarily because I remember I liked Justice League because I had fun with it.
Yeah.
And Batman v Superman, I did enjoy, but like I felt like it was not even close to Man of Steel because I love Man of Steel.
Right. Have you by the way, have you watched the 3-hour version of Batman vs Superman?
No, I need to.
Yeah, you do, because I think your opinion might change on the movie after you watch the
I mean, I like
version.
Batman v Superman, but to me it was like just scraped the acceptable,
right,
like an enjoyable mark. So yeah, I would like, especially after seeing the Zack Snyder cut not cut, like movie. I would definitely be interested in the 3-hour Batman v Superman. So
let's talk about Aquaman. His story was not altered too much. There were some scenes that were cut out. The scene with him and Willem Dafoe was cut out of the theatrical version, and it gives us a little bit more.
Yeah, I totally didn't know that Willem Dafoe was going to be in this, and when I remember when it showed him, I was like, "Oh, that's crazy."
Yeah. When the first time I sat down to watch the movie, I did pay attention to some of the names in the credits, and David Thewlis's name was in the credits.
And in this one,
yeah,
who is he?
He's Ares in the when Wonder Woman is giving Darkseid's history,
right? And
you see like Zeus fighting Darkseid and stuff. He's Ares.
Oh, wow.
He's practically unrecognizable. I think it's part of me wonders if it was kind of like he was wearing a motion capture suit, because they like beefed. David Thewlis is not a very big guy.
And if you don't know who David Thewlis is, he plays Professor Lupin.
Lupin, yeah,
in the Harry Potter series, and he also was the villain in Dragonheart.
That's right. Well, he's also Ares in Wonder Woman. But yeah, I didn't even I was like waiting for him the whole movie because I saw his name in the credits, and I was like, who was he? And it said Ares. Obviously I figured he was playing Ares, but I didn't recognize him at all in that scene. He's just like, I guess he's like because in Wonder Woman he's when we first see David Thewlis, he looks like a normal dude, and then at the end he's kind of wearing the armor and stuff. But in this, they did kind of the Lord of the Rings thing where the gods are taller than like the regular people and everything.
Right.
And he's completely bald and he's like really muscular. So that's what I was saying. Like it doesn't look like David Thewlis at all.
Right.
And when he's the one that slams the axe into Darkseid's shoulder, and Darkseid is all bleeding and everything. And they even do a close up of him, and he's like screaming, and I'm like, that's David Thewlis, I guess. Like it doesn't look anything like him. Right. So it makes me kind of wonder if they did some CG stuff with him to make him look younger and maybe make him look bigger, and so with all that, it just didn't really quite look like him. And he has no lines or anything, so it's kind of interesting that he got like an opening credits credit.
Yeah, that is strange.
Yeah. But yeah, it was cool seeing Willem Dafoe. You still haven't seen Aquaman, have you? The movie.
I have
Aquaman.
not.
Yeah, so it was cool seeing Willem Dafoe. It was cool hearing him.
I'm assuming he's in the Aquaman movie.
He is in Aquaman.
So yes. The fact that that would have made me not shocked to see that Willem Dafoe was in the movie because I didn't know he was in Aquaman. Right.
There you go. One of the things that's interesting about this movie that they obviously changed. Well, so here's the thing, right? Zack Snyder's also said that Warner Brothers has basically stated that this movie, Zack Snyder's Justice League, is not canon, which is ridiculous. It's canon to me.
Well, I'm wondering now if they're going to... I would assume if this continues to get any kind of push, that they would walk that statement back.
Maybe. I don't see... I mean, I think part of the... According, again, from stuff I've read with Zack Snyder... I think part of the reason that they agreed to release this movie was like basically kind of on the condition that there won't be any more of these movies. You know what I mean?
But once again,
it's all about money to them. And if they feel like they could make money off of a part
Right.
2 or something, then
Yeah, if they could, then we would actually get a Darkseid movie if they actually
Right.
decided to do that. But I would not hold my breath on that.
I wouldn't either.
At
There is
all.
a hashtag restore the Snyderverse. People are posting that a lot now. So, who knows? Maybe it'll get some traction, but I don't think it'll happen. But anyway, what I was going to say was, in this movie, Amber Heard, who plays Mira, has like a British accent. And she does not have that accent in the theatrical version of Justice League. And she does not have that accent in Aquaman. So one of the things I think they kind of, when Joss Whedon took over, I think he was like, nah, lose the accent. And so she has this American accent that became canon in the Aquaman movie. And another thing they kind of changed from this movie to Aquaman is it seems like whenever anybody from Atlantis wants to talk like in English, they create those air pockets.
Right.
And then I didn't notice this the first time I watched it, but the second time I watched it, there's a scene where Mira is like communicating with an Atlantean guard, and they're making like dolphin noises.
Right.
Which I thought was kind of interesting. But in Aquaman, they just talk. They're underwater, but they just talk to each other.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah, so they don't have.
Well, think about that though. That entire
they'd have
movie,
to make an air bubble for the entire movie, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
So, but I saw something online where somebody goes, "I like to think that they are actually communicating via dolphin noises the entire movie, and we were just hearing like the translation, which I thought was actually kind of funny." But yeah, if you watch some of these other movies that have kind of came out after the theatrical version of Justice League, they have. They have gone with what was put out. And so with this original movie, that's why I think Warner Brothers is saying this isn't canon. But in my opinion, this is the perfect ending to the trilogy that is Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, and then this. And so for me, this is canon with those 3 movies, at least.
Speaking of, I was going to ask, though, we were talking about Aquaman.
Yeah.
Someone makes a comment that he's half-blood because he can breathe air.
Yeah, which I also... So, in the Aquaman movie, there are certain Atlanteans who can breathe air. And it's usually... I think it's like the royal family can kind of breathe air or something like that. Because there are Atlanteans, or at least underwater species or races of people who can't breathe air. And so they have like these... this armor that has like water in the mask so that they can breathe.
Well, also I don't want to really get into that anyway because it deals with the Aquaman movie,
right.
And if that's explained in there, then we'll just go around that.
Well, it was a weird line though. I will give you that because it's Wonder Woman. She says he's a water breather, and Bruce Wayne says, "Well, he was breathing air when I talked to him." And she goes, "Well, then he's a half-blood then." But then there's another scene with Steppenwolf who pulls an Atlantean out of the ocean and like interrogates him on land.
Well, I would assume that they're creating air bubbles to talk also.
Yeah, that's true. So they're breathing air. So I guess
everyone's
they're all
breathing air.
So Wonder Woman just doesn't know what she's talking about.
Exactly.
Really, that's what it comes down to.
Now here's the next question. What else did she mislead us on?
Wonder Woman's just a liar. Speaking of Wonder Woman, what did you think about the? So we saw some of that scene with the terrorists in England in the theatrical version.
Right.
This one was a little bit more extended. It had, it was just kind of edited a little differently, and I really liked it. She flat out kills people in that scene, which I thought was interesting.
And was he going to shoot the kids?
Yes,
he was.
Well,
no.
yeah, he was. Yeah,
I mean, in the theatrical.
Yeah, when she's kind of moving quickly and stopping all the bullets with her bracers. Right. Yeah. That is in the theatrical version.
It's pretty dark.
Yeah,
pretty dark.
I liked it though, and she hits her bracers, and like the entire side of that building just blows out. And then she turns around. She's like, "It's okay. It's all
I know.
over now. Everything's fine." And I was thinking, like, that's a lot of damage. You just, I mean, you killed the guy too, and he was gonna kill all the kids and everything.
It
so
was a lot because you had all the police officers down there in front, and all the debris came and like started crushing their cars.
Yeah.
And then she's like, there were a couple moments where that happened. And this other one reminded me of, the moment in Amazing Spider-Man 2, about the taxi. And
oh yeah.
In this Flash, let me find my note. Okay, so yeah, it's when it's when they're resurrecting Superman, and Flash like is running and touches the box and then gets like thrown. Is that the moment?
Yeah, he does get thrown. He's moving so fast he kind of goes.
Right. I was trying because I was trying to think if there was another moment where he had to touch the box. But yeah. And then like he gets thrown and Batman, Bruce, and everyone, they're just standing there. Not
checking on him or
no. They don't even react to him like getting blown like into a wall like super fast.
They just care about Superman.
Exactly.
Well, we haven't talked at all about Steppenwolf. So he was the bad guy from the theatrical version, but he has a much different look.
That's what I couldn't remember what he looked like, but yeah, I was like, I'm pretty sure that is a new design.
Oh yeah. So not only does Steppenwolf have a new look though, he also has more. Just like everybody else in the movie, he's got more scenes that give him more of a backstory and actually gives him motivation. One of the things they changed for the theatrical version is that whole scene with Darkseid's backstory, or with Darkseid talking about like the old gods fighting Darkseid and stuff like that. In the theatrical version, it's a way shorter scene, and it's Steppenwolf that they're fighting. Darkseid isn't really talked about, and it's just in the theatrical version. I think it's just Steppenwolf wants to conquer the world, and this is the one world that like kept him, defeated him essentially, and he's holding a grudge.
Really, I thought I did remember that in the theatrical there was he was acting on behalf of Darkseid.
There's one line in the theatrical version where he says something, and then he says for Darkseid, but that's the only time Darkseid is mentioned in the theatrical version.
Right.
Yeah. So I mean, but I do know in that scene where she talks about the old gods fighting him and stuff, she says Wonder Woman says something about how he, it was like the one planet or the one world that like defeated him, and he went mad with revenge, wanting revenge or something. So, but I love the story in this movie where he has fallen out of grace with Darkseid, and he's trying to get back into his on his good side, and I love the scenes where he's talking to Darkseid in Apocalypse, and Darkseid tells him, you have 50,000 worlds left to conquer before before your debt is paid or whatever.
Who plays Darkseid, by the way?
I actually don't know.
Because
I could look that up.
If I had to guess, you would have known. I would imagine if it was him though, but that it was Bill Nye.
Oh yeah,
his mannerisms kind of reminded, or maybe his voice. I can't remember, but something just Bill Nye popped in my head.
Yeah, no, it's not Bill Nye. It's credited as Peter Guinness, who I am not super familiar with. I'm looking him up. He was in Alien 3, but I don't really remember him in that. And he was in The Saint. So he's a British actor. I don't know him. And I have no idea if he's related to Alec Guinness. Or if it's just a coincidence they have the same name. But yeah, Peter Guinness. I don't know. I'm not familiar with him. The guy that plays Darkseid is a guy named Ray Porter, who is not really like a big name actor either. But he did a fantastic. I think he was the guy actually like wearing the motion capture suit playing Darkseid, but he's also the voice of Darkseid.
He does the voice?
Yeah, and
it's
he
good.
has a great voice.
Now, obviously there's lots of distortion and effects
and stuff,
added to it.
Which
but
they did for Steppenwolf too, which I liked as well.
Oh yeah, I agree. But the finalized version, is I agree. Darkseid is awesome, and he's pretty much I can't think of anything I would have changed about him. His voice was great. His appearance was pretty much spot on.
Yeah.
I was super happy. So you have the history of Darkseid, and they show that, and then I remember thinking, which we didn't get, but it's okay. I was like, is Zack Snyder gonna just totally change this being like Steppenwolf, and are we actually gonna get to see like Darkseid be the final villain of the movie? But that was before they showed the scene where you were talking. You showed me with where he's killing Aquaman.
Right. Yeah.
So you get even more Darkseid.
Yeah.
And then we get more Darkseid by seeing him through the portal.
Yeah.
So
which I loved.
Yeah, it was great. And when Wonder Woman decapitates Steppenwolf and it rolls and Darkseid just crushes his head with his foot, it was pretty epic.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing. That scene too of Darkseid killing Aquaman. I love that scene just because then we see his omega beams. Yeah, and I was like, oh, because I was wondering if we were going to get to see any of that, or if it was just going to be. I was wondering if it was just going to be kind of shots of Darkseid standing there, kind of. I didn't know what we were going to get with Darkseid with this movie. Some of the trailers they put out had a couple of clips of him talking. So I knew we were going to get a little bit of dialogue or something. Whether I didn't know where that was going to be or anything, but I'm pretty pleased with the amount of Darkseid we got. It was and
like
those
I said,
scenes
the
were
only
all
thing
pretty epic.
really was I was wondering was Zack Snyder going to choose to do it because he knew that there's not going to be another movie to have Darkseid be the villain. It didn't happen, but like you said, and I agree, the amount of Darkseid we got, I'm satisfied with. It was
me too.
It was a good representation.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about Superman. So they resurrect Superman, obviously. Very similar. I was actually a little surprised because I was curious if... Actually, I guess I wasn't that surprised, but I was curious if the way they resurrected him in the theatrical version was a Joss Whedon thing, or if they resurrected him, if it was like the team resurrecting him like they did in the theatrical version, if that was the case. And it was, but one of the differences was they were all on board with it. They were all, wanting to do it. In the theatrical version, Joss Whedon redid the whole scene where they're talking about it, and it's all Batman's idea. And Wonder Woman is very against it in the theatrical version. And in this one, it was kind of cool. I liked how Barry was like, "Who's gonna say it? I'm not gonna say it." And then Cyborg shows like the hologram of Superman flying. That was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they so I did like how that's the first time we kind of see Barry reversing time too. He gets really close. Actually, I guess he technically would go a little bit faster than the speed of light because that's how he does end up reversing time in this movie anyway.
Yeah.
And we see the box touch the water, and then it starts to rise back up right as he's getting close to it to touch it. That's a pretty epic scene too, and then the fight scene is pretty much the same as it was in the theatrical version. They added some stuff towards the end, but otherwise it's mostly the same. It's the stuff at the end is better. I like that there's not really any dialogue between Superman and Batman. There is in the theatrical version.
Oh, that's right, because he asks, "Do you bleed?"
Yeah. I like that Superman just looks at him and just starts, shooting his heat vision at him.
Is this the scene where I wrote the note? Hold on. Well, I will make a comment about that you just said. He does the heat vision, and that was the moment where I thought about how much Batman has changed in cinema.
Mm-hmm.
Because I was like, in 89 Batman, we got just straight up normal Batman, nothing supernatural. I mean,
right.
Joker, Jack Napier does kind of become a cartoon character to a
Sure.
degree. But you know, and then of course the Christopher Nolan movies were taken seriously. I'm not even going to mention Batman Forever and Batman and Robin.
Right.
But in this, we have a Batman that is holding up his arm, blocking alien energy with a gauntlet. So we have now gone to this is really the first time we've gotten such a comic book style Batman in a live action performance.
Yeah. And actually, I remember seeing, the Dark Knight. I love the Dark Knight trilogy, and I would not change anything about those movies. But I remember when Iron Man came out in 2008. And, in that movie, that movie was mostly ground. It didn't seem comic booky. I mean, it was comic booky. I don't know how to explain this. It wasn't cartoony, but it felt like mostly like real life. But it was this guy who was making gadgets that would never exist in real life. You know what I mean?
Right.
But it worked. And I remember watching Iron Man, I was like, man, I would love to see a Batman like this, where he's got like all these gadgets and stuff that is very comic booky and would never actually work in real life. But it makes sense in the movie. And that's something we kind of see with those gauntlets that catch or whatever
and it's
energy
not
and
bat
dissipate
skates. Like
right, it's not.
He has a reason to make them.
Right, exactly. Yeah, yeah. It's not. Yeah, it's not shark repellent that he just has on him, at all times or something. So yeah, I mean, that I love the Ben Affleck Batman, and
oh yeah, me
would
too.
love to see more, and I'm glad that he's going to be in the Flash, and I hope that does not change.
I hope that we've got Robert Pattinson now, so. I sounded like I was depressed about that. I'm not.
Right, yeah.
But because I like the footage I've seen. Granted, it's a trailer and they can do anything with that. Now they're really talented at that. But I was gonna say I wonder if we'll get any, maybe because of the reception of this, if we could get Ben Affleck back. But who knows?
That would be amazing. I do know that I feel like there's still so much to talk about this movie, but I do know that the scene with Lex Luthor and Deathstroke at the end of the movie, that I believe was supposed to originally be
right
a post-credit scene, which it was in the theatrical version, but a little different. But while they were shooting Justice League, I believe it was the plan to have a Batman solo film that Ben Affleck was directing, and Deathstroke was going to be the villain. So that scene was supposed to kind of set up. That was definitely the plan, because I don't remember who it was, but someone tweeted some kind of like video of Deathstroke. It was Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck put that out. Yeah,
that's right.
It was like a costume test type thing. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, that was definitely a thing.
When I went to Comic-Con, so this would have been 2016. This was right after Batman vs Superman came out. They showed the very first footage of Justice League, which is what got me so pumped in the first place for the movie. Zack Snyder was there, Ben Affleck was there, and Ben Affleck talked about he didn't give any real details. He just talked about like how excited he was, I guess. But he talked about the Batman movie that he was, and at that time was still on board to direct it. And it's a shame that we're not going to get to see that movie, because I would love to see Ben Affleck's Batman go up against Deathstroke. And I like Joe Manganiello
I'd
as
love to
Deathstroke.
see a Ben Affleck directed Batman.
Yeah, me too.
With him
actually.
as Batman, that would have just it was awesome to find that out. And
yeah,
we're not going to get it, but
it's a bummer.
So that thing I was asking if it was my note, and it is, and it was, we were talking about the Batman and Superman moment right after Superman's resurrected.
Yeah,
and there's this kind of stare off.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like when they first see each other, and Batman like is looking back at Superman, and I thought he should just say Martha. And Superman just goes, oh, I'm back.
Buddy!
Snap out of it.
No, yeah. That would have actually been hilarious. I would love to see like an outtake where Ben Affleck does that just for fun, He's like, no, wait, Martha. Martha. You're letting him kill Martha. That would have been hilarious. That would have been really funny. The cop, by the way, in that scene, Jerry, who Lois Lane gives coffee to, that's Mark McClure, who played Jimmy Olsen in the Christopher Reeve Superman movies. It's a little cameo from him. He was in the theatrical version too, but he played like the prison guard who signs Barry in,
Yeah.
to see his dad. He's also like Batman's contact at the jail.
By the way,
which is a little silly.
So he says to Lois as she's coming that he's like, I didn't think you were going to come today. Remember that? It's actually right before
they resurrect him. Yeah.
And she makes a statement that one last time.
Mm-hmm.
So I was curious, like,
that scene comes right after when she talks with Martha, who's not Martha. And Martha says to her, come back to the land of the living. So I think that was her. She was going there to basically say
goodbye forever.
Goodbye. Yeah, I'm moving on.
Right.
I have to get on with my life. And then, as she's walking away, that's one of my favorite shots in the movie, actually. And it was in the trailer, and I remember seeing it in the trailer and being like, oh my gosh, Amy Adams is just so good. But when you hear the sound, kind of the explosion of him being resurrected, and she turns around and she sees him just hanging out, in the sky there, and the look on her face, of like, am I, like, you can almost see her like heart drop, and she's just like, am I seeing what I'm actually seeing here?
Yeah.
It's just awesome to me.
There's another moment with that too, with Martha Kent,
mm-hmm.
when she pulls up and Lois and Clark are in the field, and they've already had some time together, and then Martha Kent gets to see Clark.
That
was a good moment. She did a fantastic job there too.
Now let's rewind a little bit and tell me what. Now you sent me a text message, so I kind of know how you feel about this. But tell me what you thought about the reveal once Martha leaves Lois Lane's apartment. And we find out that it's actually the Martian Manhunter.
It blew me away because I had no idea. So at first I saw her eyes turn red, and I was like, "Oh no, what's Steppenwolf or Darkseid doing to her?" And then you see the cape, and I was like, "Oh, are you kidding me?" That was I had no idea. That was exciting.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. I liked it a lot. I saw somebody complain about it, that it weakened the scene between Martha and Lois, but I don't really feel like it does. I think it was kind of the push that Lois kind of needed. And I think it helped coming from Martha rather than if it had been like General Swanwick or whatever his name was from Man of Steel, who Martian Manhunter,
I think I get what they're saying. I think what they're saying is because it wasn't Martha
it wasn't actually her. Yeah,
that Martha and Lois now never had that touching moment, so it takes away from the building of their relationship.
They did in Lois's brain, but Martha wasn't actually there.
Exactly. Exactly. Lois got to experience the moment, not Martha.
I was gonna say, it doesn't bother me. I like the scene. I actually knew that was coming because Zack Snyder, back before the movie was announced that it was actually going to get released, he would post stuff online, and he posted storyboards of that moment of Martha churning into Martian Manhunter and then into General Swanwick. So I was pretty pumped when I saw that, finally getting to see that, on the not big screen, small screen. But still,
speaking of small screen, why is this 4:3?
I believe so. For Batman vs Superman, Zack Snyder shot a couple of those scenes with IMAX cameras. And IMAX film is square like that. It's not quite 1:3:3 to 1. It's actually like 1.4 to 1 or something like that. But it is that square format, and he said that he kind of fell in love with that format. And so what he did was, when you shoot on film is actually 4:3, and then they crop the tops and bottoms of it for theaters. They would essentially turn it 16:9. So it's just, what we saw was just the uncropped version of the footage.
Right.
It's kind of like Stanley Kubrick would do that. When I don't know if it was him or what, but the first few times his movies were released on DVD, they released them in 4:3. And it was the uncropped camera negative, or whatever you want to call it, which at the time I didn't appreciate. I remember just thinking, why is this movie full screen? You know, like
Right.
But the only movie I have of Stanley Kubrick's that is that format is actually my wife's copy of The Shining. We have that on DVD, and it's the full 4:3 aspect ratio. So yeah, it's kind of a weird choice, but I didn't mind it at all. Actually, it the movie still looked great.
Yeah,
so.
I didn't notice it except when they mentioned that it was that way, and then really at the end is really when I kind of saw again, and I was like, oh yeah, it's 4:3. I have a note here of one thing that I did think was funny that Flash said, which was the A or B hat.
Oh yeah.
and Aquaman goes, definitely not A. And then he goes, or B. And he goes, let me see A again.
Yeah. I thought that was pretty good too.
Yeah.
Well, one of my notes that I wrote was I like the explanation that the mother boxes were afraid of Superman. That's something that I don't think they touched on in the theatrical version. I think it was just Superman died, the mother boxes awoke. It kind of was. They didn't go into detail, but in this, it was talking about how Silas awoke the mother box to create Cyborg over a year ago, and it didn't call out to Steppenwolf because it was afraid of Superman. And so once Superman died, and that's one of the things I like, but the opening of the movie is, we see Superman's death again, and his death screams are kind of echoing over throughout the world, essentially.
It was very interesting. It was a very gripping opening. Because especially first time watching this, you're getting to see once again a new scene.
Right.
And
right off the bat.
It's dark because it's the death of Superman.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of agonizing to watch because you're hearing his agony. So, I thought that was a effective opening.
Yeah, I agree. So anyway, I like that. I like that whole explanation that the mother boxes were essentially afraid of Superman, and so once they realized that he was dead, that's when they finally kind of called out to Steppenwolf, which I thought was kind of a cool explanation.
Yeah.
I do definitely want to talk about the music. So Tom Holkenborg, aka Junkie XL, was the original composer for the movie back when Zack Snyder was originally the director. And then once Zack Snyder left, Joss Whedon came on board and fired Tom Holkenborg and brought in Danny Elfman. Now, Danny Elfman, in my opinion, is one of the all-time greats of film composers. No denying that.
I'd say most people would agree with that.
Yeah. However, his music for Justice League, in my opinion, did not fit the kind of... I mean, maybe it kind of fits the tone of Joss Whedon's version of the movie, but as far as I know, I believe Danny Elfman also had very little time to come up with the score, so it's not as iconic as a lot of his other scores are, and he ended up using his Batman theme from the Burton movies and the John Williams Superman score a little bit for Superman stuff, which is cool, but that's not the music they used in Batman vs. Superman. It's not the music they used in Man of Steel, so it just didn't really feel connected. This music, I think, is incredible. I think Tom Holkenborg knocked it out of the park, and there are moments in the movie... my favorite my favorite musical moments in the movie are that scene again with Flash where at the end where he goes into the Speed Force after the mother boxes unite. That music is incredible. But also when Superman first shows back up and Steppenwolf's axe lands on his shoulder and he goes, not impressed.
Mm-hmm.
And then Superman just starts beating on Steppenwolf. That music is the music from Man of Steel where he's first flying. He first puts on the suit and is flying around. And to hear that music again while he's finally come back, he's joined the team and he's beating up Steppenwolf. I mean, that gave me chills.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
I liked the one piece of music I actually remembered was Jim Gordon seeing Batman for the first time in the movie. and he's like looking up, waiting for him, and you see like this cloth waving or something, and then you see Batman like standing on a gargoyle or something, and the music that plays was very Batman, but it was unique, and it was just a very awesome shot and moment for Batman right there. I loved that.
Yeah, me too. So I bought the score on iTunes the day the movie came out, actually before I even got to see the movie, and it's 4 hours worth of music. It's 54 tracks. So I listened to it without like. Thankfully, he didn't name any of the songs anything spoilery. That's always my concern when I'm listening to a soundtrack before seeing the movie. It's like whenever I think about it, I think about The Phantom Menace. The soundtrack for The Phantom Menace, I think, came out before the movie did. And one of the tracks on that is Qui-Gon's funeral, and so people were upset that John Williams had named that track Qui-Gon's funeral, and they got, I guess we know he's
what
dead.
Were they thinking?
I don't know.
That's crazy. I mean, The Phantom Menace before it was,
I know,
came out, like
that was like one of the most anticipated movies of all time, and
sounds like someone made a boo-boo there or something.
Yeah, I agree. So anyway, I was trying not to like look at the track names because I just wasn't sure. I didn't want anything to be spoiled for me. But he didn't label them anything spoilery at all. But I've been listening to it pretty much nonstop since Thursday. It's pretty amazing. So yeah, I love the music in the movie a lot. I think the music is as weird as it is to say, I think it is much better than Danny Elfman's score for Justice League.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That is weird to say. And I agree. One
of the other things I was going to mention about the music, I was curious how you felt about it. I've seen some complaints online about the like Amazon like chanting, you kind of hear.
Right. So the only complaint I had was that I was watching it with subtitles on, and every time her theme comes on, it comes up. It's like ancient.
Lamentation music or whatever. Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah, it didn't bother me at all. It is kind of annoying that would pop up every time.
It's the only reason it's annoying is because it would pop up. That's it.
Yeah. But I liked it. I didn't think it was. I think people online just thought it was overused. It was like every time she shows up, you kind of hear this vocalization. But I didn't think it was. It didn't bother me at all. Really, I like it, and I like that they still use the Wonder Woman theme.
Yeah, because that's one I always liked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
I like that for that post credits, which is not a post credit scene, but the Lex Luthor scene, we hear that Lex Luthor music from Batman vs. Superman,
right,
which was awesome.
I agree.
So yeah, the music is
kind of an unstable piece.
Yeah, it's like a little different than it is in Batman vs. Superman. It is a little like
it's
cool.
I'm just saying,
but the music itself is
it's just the way it's written is kind of it's not really. It just kind of makes you feel off kilter as you listen, to it. Because Lex Luthor is a little off kilter,
right?
So Lex Luthor, what did you think of his scene? Well, you said it was in it in the theatrical, right?
It's a little. So in the theatrical version, we see the scene with the prison guard, or I guess it's an Arkham guard, calling out to Lex Luthor, and he's like, "Don't make me come in there." Right. So all that's the same,
right?
And then we see Deathstroke on the boat, and he gets onto Lex Luthor's boat. That's all pretty much the same. The biggest difference is the last line. I think maybe by the time the movie came out, they knew that Ben Affleck's Batman wasn't going to happen. And so rather than revealing to Deathstroke who Batman is, Lex Luthor's line in the theatrical version is, don't you think we should have a league of our own? And so he's kind of hinting at the setup of like the Legion of Doom.
Right.
But I like this one a lot with him saying, if you want Batman, here is something that can help. His name is Bruce Wayne. And I like that, he's Deathstroke's reaction to that. He's like, we do have something to celebrate. The only weird thing about the scene, and it doesn't bother me in the slightest because I know that they were shot at 2 different times, is the scene right after that, which is the post-apocalyptic kind of future scene, nightmare scene that they shot after the fact to add into this movie. And Batman and Deathstroke are working together all of a sudden. So he goes from like the scene that we saw right before it is Deathstroke getting Batman's secret identity and being like, "Oh, I'm going to take him down now." And then the next scene we see, they're working together. But like I said, doesn't bother me because, number one, it's supposed to be in the future anyway, so who knows what has happened in between those two times. But also, this nightmare scene was one of the things that they shot. Once it was announced that the movie was going to come out, Zack Snyder convinced Warner Brothers to let him shoot just a couple additional scenes, and this nightmare apocalyptic scene was one of them. Right. And I'm very curious to hear what you think about it, because this is mostly
that's where I was going. After I was going to ask about Lex Luthor, I was going to bring up obviously Jared Leto.
Yeah, and I'm curious to hear what you think about that.
So, it's better than Suicide Squad.
Right.
It's a good Joker. It's very, to me, I feel like, and it's fine, I'm okay with this, but he definitely, I felt like, was trying to get more of the Heath Ledger Joker this time, and kind of, just, he almost talked like him and had mannerisms way more like the Dark Knight Joker, I felt like.
I agree. I like this version of the Joker better than the Suicide Squad version. However, for me, he didn't. This might be nitpicky. I don't know, but I like the scene and I like their interaction and I like the look of him a lot. I like that his teeth were like black. It was it was creepy looking. I don't know if I liked his voice. It didn't really feel to me like he was doing much of a Joker voice. It sounded more like Jared Leto.
It was different.
And that was it. The first time I watched it, it kind of threw me off. I almost missed what they were talking about because I was kind of going, he just sounds like Jared Leto. Like, it doesn't really sound like he's doing the Joker at all. And then he would kind of do like that weird Joker laugh, which was creepy but very different. It was like
yeah,
it wasn't like a real like,
which I've never, and I still not a huge fan of.
It's a little
different. Weird. The only thing about the joke, not the only thing. The thing ultimately, I would say, I wouldn't have settled with this version of the Joker because I felt like he was almost too like out there, like as far as it was almost like he was just like in his own crazy universe, which of course the Joker is, but still right. The Joker's coherent, and this Joker was almost like he wasn't even like, it was almost like he was experiencing like super trauma or something, like
right.
He just felt kind of slow in the head, like he just didn't know what was going on.
Maybe Batman had beaten him so many times
all these years.
Maybe,
it's finally
maybe it caught up with him. But yeah, I agree with that though, because when Superman shows up at the end, it cuts to Joker and it almost looks like he's somewhere else. I mean, like he's not like almost looking at Superman. It's like he's looking somewhere else and he's like smiling. It's like he's not there.
Yeah, right. It's like he's
there, but he's not there.
Yeah, it's like he's completely just out of it.
Yeah. So it was like I said, I liked the scene and I liked it more the second time I watched it, but yeah, it's still not my favorite Joker portrayal. Right.
But definitely the right direction from Suicide Squad.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And it would be interesting to see more. And I know why they included it. It was part of the reason was Zack Snyder felt like it was, that Batman and Joker needed a scene together. Like they didn't really have a scene in Suicide Squad. Batman was on top of the car, but they didn't really have a scene where they were interacting or anything. So he kind of wanted Ben Affleck and Jared Leto to have a scene together. And it was cool. I definitely liked seeing it. And I liked seeing Cyborg and Mira and Deathstroke and Flash in the future scenes. It was cool seeing Flash in the gear that he basically wears in the scene from Batman vs. Superman. Interesting tidbit about that was I remember reading that Ezra Miller was actually in England shooting, I believe he was shooting Fantastic Beasts 3. And so they just put him on a green screen, I think, soundstage, and I assume he was probably wearing a motion cap suit or something. And Zack Snyder actually directed him via Skype or Zoom or something. So he wasn't even physically in the same room with him, and he basically just told him like what to do. And at first I was like, man, how did you do that? But he has no lines in the scene, so he's basically just telling him like, okay, like pretend like you're coming out of hiding and looking around, and then okay, get ready for battle, because that's basically the two things we see him doing in the movie. So, who knows?
Technology these days.
I know, isn't it crazy?
It's insane. Really cool.
I loved how Deathstroke looked too with his like mohawk and stuff. I thought that was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
So yeah, really cool scene. I didn't expect it to be at the very end of the movie like that. That was kind of interesting. Basically, the last 3 scenes in the movie are all basically post-credit scenes that we just got at the end of the movie.
Right.
Because the scene right after that, which I really want to talk to you about, is so that whole nightmare scene is an actual nightmare. You know, Bruce wakes up, and then Martian Manhunter comes to visit, and they have a conversation, and Bruce is weirdly
calm
about it. Yeah, I thought about that too. He's like, "Can I help you?"
He's like, "Are you selling vacuums? What's going on here?"
Yeah, and then and he's very he almost comes across as rude, because like Martian Manhunter's like, you know, this is my home now, and it's time I start fighting for it. And he's like, all right, well, glad to have you. You know, he's just not. He's very just kind of laissez-faire or whatever.
Yeah,
is that the term?
Yeah, it was kind of
laissez-faire.
I definitely picked up or felt the same way about that, and I was like, "This is kind of strange."
Yeah, but I like the scene a lot, and I like seeing Martian Manhunter. I think that was super cool, and that was another scene that I think that was actually technically a reshoot. So that was one that they did additionally, because you can also tell Ben Affleck has lost weight, and he is skinnier in that scene and in the nightmare scene. But he looks good. But originally, I think, according to Zack Snyder, and something I read just yesterday, I think, they had shot that scene originally, but it was not going to be Martian Manhunter.
Green Lantern?
It was going to be Jon Stewart. Yep. And Warner Brothers, and I don't know when they asked him not to do it, but he said Warner Brothers asked him not to do Green Lantern. Because, and I think it has to do with them, they're doing this Green Lantern show on HBO.
Yeah.
And they didn't want him to steal their thunder, maybe, or something. I don't know. So he said his compromise was he's going to still do the scene, but they're going to change it to Martian Manhunter. And they agreed to that. So, but it would have been pretty cool to see Jon Stewart show up in the end. And we did see a Green Lantern. It's the same one we saw in the theatrical version. We saw him more close up in this movie, but...
Right. Actually, there were 2.
Were there?
There was you're talking about the one in the battle?
Yeah.
And then there was one, I don't think it was the same Green Lantern, because I think it couldn't have been, because it was, I think, in the vision where Diana's dead, and like, you know, it's the future, and there's a camera pan that goes over, and there's a dead Green Lantern on the...
I could not tell because it's quick, but it looked to me like that might have been Kilowog.
Oh, I didn't pick. I.
The only reason why I don't know if it's Kilowog is because it looked like he had a mask on, and Kilowog doesn't normally wear a mask.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, his build and his face and everything, it looked like Kilowog to me, but I don't know. It's quick. You should go back and rewatch that moment. That's when they're about to resurrect Superman, and Cyborg sees that flash of the future. Go back and rewatch it. And it might be Kilowog. I'd be curious to see what you think about that. But but you're right. There are 2 Green Lanterns in the movie. You're right. I forgot all about the Kilowog part. If that's Kilowog, I don't know. Whoever that Green Lantern
it probably is. I would imagine, since he's like one of the better known ones.
Yeah. But I was expecting either Jon Stewart or somebody to show up in the movie, and part of that is because of my T-shirt,
right?
Because I've got the Green Lantern symbol on there.
I was, you know, I'm my favorite's Hal Jordan, so I was hoping for Hal, but sure. I love Jon Stewart too, and that would be definitely the next pick. Would be Jon Stewart. Did he replace? No, he wasn't the immediate replacement for Hal, was he? Because it was Kyle, I think.
I don't know, to be honest with you. I am not entirely sure. I know Jon Stewart was on the Justice League animated TV show. He wasn't on that.
A lot more people.
Or Hal wasn't.
don't follow Green Lantern know who John Stewart is.
Yeah, that's true.
He's definitely the second most famous Green Lantern.
Right. That's a good question, though. I don't know who came after Hal Jordan.
I think it was Kyle.
Might have been. I know Guy Gardner was a Green Lantern, too, but
right.
I don't think
and
he
I
ever,
think Guy
replaced...
came after Kyle, because apparently, if I'm not mistaken, I heard this from someone that I believe this is what they said, that's a big DC fan and Green Lantern fan, that Kyle was not liked by the general audience, so they got Guy.
Oh, I gotcha.
And then I don't know what happened
like Jason
with
Todd.
him. Huh? Yeah,
like Jason
yeah,
Todd.
exactly. And then John Stewart, I believe, was after Guy.
Gotcha.
So at the end with the portal, you have Darkseid like literally staring at the Justice League through the portal. Why isn't he jumping through?
That's a great question. I don't know. Maybe you'd think he would just jump in and start.
He's like, the portal's still open. I'm coming. No, he's like.
Instead, he just watches. That's a good question. You'd think him and Desaad and Granny Goodness there and whoever.
But then
else
that
is
would
behind
require.
Yeah,
a second
they could set
movie.
up for part 2. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I didn't think about that, but it doesn't bother me. Obviously, I kind of like the idea of Darkseid watching Steppenwolf to see if he will be successful or not,
right?
And then seeing him fail and being like, well, and he says to Desaad, I think he says, "Ready the Armada, we'll do it the old ways."
That's
or something
right.
Like
so
that.
You're right. There is a. I guess he's afraid, like. If he couldn't go through, he's like, we need the army. So, I mean, he's not afraid. But obviously he has some reservations and doesn't want to underestimate them, I guess.
Right. Seeing the Justice League decapitate Steppenwolf, he was, he's probably like, all right, we need to make sure we do this right.
Yeah. I have a couple more things that I wrote down that aren't big, but like one was when Cyborg, they were in Superman's ship, and Cyborg makes a comment that really stood out to me. He said, "This is amazing." And I was like, it felt like it was emphasized. And I believe it was, because I think it was Snyder trying to point out how advanced the technology was to impress Cyborg.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, because his reaction is just, this is amazing. So I felt like that was very intentional to have him say that.
Yeah.
Also, I wrote a question of who was in the pod. It wasn't Kira, was it?
No, I don't think so. Because there's that one empty pod. That's the same ship from Man of Steel, you know? So there's the one empty pod. It's been opened. We assume that is Kara's pod. So I don't know. That's just another Kryptonian, I guess. I don't know exactly who that is. But it's interesting that I guess because it was Kara's pod.
Well, remember we talked about it before. There's that comic,
right? Yeah.
That came out before Man of Steel, I think.
It did, yeah, yep.
And it was her leaving.
Yeah.
Or no, it wasn't her leaving. You just see a silhouette, but it was her battling someone else that was sabotaging the ship. And wanted to start a new Kryptonian race on Earth with her. And
man, you remember more of that comic than I do.
They battle it out, and the ending panel was like a silhouette leaving, and of course you assume it's Kara. So,
but that is the same ship where he got his first suit, and there was another blue and red suit, and then there were actually several suits on that ship, and he picks the black suit, which I loved, obviously. I loved seeing him in the black suit. But in the comics, I feel like the black suit was kind of like a regeneration suit. Like it was meant to help, like, kind of harness the sun's rays to help heal him and bring him back to 100%. And that wasn't the case in this movie. And part of, when they resurrected him, he was basically back to 100% right away because he's fighting the other members of the Justice League and seems totally fine. So there really wasn't a reason for him to be in the black suit in this movie other than...
He wears it after he's resurrected in the comics.
In the comics, yeah, exactly.
But it was amazing.
It was amazing. I loved seeing it.
Because when I first saw it, I don't think it was my TV. It was like you couldn't tell. It almost looked like it was just shadow and it was dark.
Oh yeah.
And then it cuts to him like leaning down, and then you start to, and I was like, oh my gosh, is it black?
I wish that I had not watched, like you texted me after that too. You were like, his suit.
Yeah.
And I kind of laughed because I've watched all the trailers that have been released for this movie, and I almost wish I hadn't, because you getting to experience that way, and,
it was,
and not knowing that he was going to wear the black suit, that would have been awesome to experience it.
Because like I said, it was dark when I saw it, and I was like, that's Shadow. But I did think, I was like, they didn't do black suit. I was like, that's Shadow. And then they do the close-up, and it is still dark, and you couldn't completely tell. It was like his shoulder, and I was like, that's maybe still blue. And then it shows the cape, and I was like, it's the black suit. So yeah, I was very excited.
Yeah, very, very cool. I like the it's interesting too. I wasn't expecting him to be wearing it at the very end when you see him on the street and he looks up and he takes his glasses off and does the Superman shirt ripping open.
Right.
Because in
so
the
he was wearing the black suit, because I actually wasn't thinking about it, because I was wondering, after they beat Steppenwolf, what was so important for him to look up, and he sees something, and then he literally steps like 4 or 5 steps away before he's like ripping off his shirt, and I was like, something must be extremely important for him to like do the shirt rip that close to like everyone that just saw him walking on the street.
Well, my thought was, and I didn't think about this during the theatrical version, but I thought of it this time, was in Batman vs Superman, Perry White and somebody else from the Daily Planet, might have been like Jenny or something, they go to Clark Kent's funeral. They see him. It's an open casket, at the Kent house. They see his body. They go to his funeral. They see him lowered into the ground. How do they explain that he has come back? Like, I at this point, I figure like Perry White's got to be like, you're Superman, right? Like, he's just got to know, like, you're Superman. Superman's back.
Superman's
you're back.
Take those glasses off real quick.
Right. Yeah. I knew it. Yeah. And maybe Perry White knew it all along. I don't know, but I don't. But I just thought about that. I was like, wait, how are they going to explain that Clark has come back when? In the comics, I pulled out the comic, The Return of Superman here that I got, because I was curious about the black suit. I was like, I'm almost positive they talk about it being like a regeneration suit. I couldn't find it, but at the end, so in the comics from the 90s, Supergirl is not his cousin. She's like an alien. I don't know what planet she's from or whatever, but she's like a shapeshifter alien. Kind of almost like Martian Manhunter, but a little bit different.
So she chooses to look like him because she looks up to him?
I don't know. I don't remember, but I just know that she's a shapeshifter, because at the end of the comic, it shows Superman like kind of trying, like maybe fixing some of the rubble from like a battle or something, and he pulls Clark Kent out, and there's like a picture of him and Lois and Clark Kent that they like, Jimmy Olsen takes or something. And then you find out later that it was Supergirl posing as Clark Kent. She shifts back into her like Supergirl form. And so that was how they like explain, it was like Clark had been caught under this rubble ever since Superman's battle with Doomsday, and then he was rescued. And so that's how they explained that he was actually still alive. He had never died. But in this movie, with you got people from his job going to his funeral and everything, like you can't quite do that. So I'm curious how, but I also, the other thing is Batman and Superman are in this universe are terrible at keeping their secret identity, because everybody knows who Superman is. Even Martian Manhunter knows, because when he goes to visit Lois as Martha, he's talking about, she's like, they all knew Superman, they didn't know Clark. Like he knows his identity. But granted, Martian Manhunter is a mind reader, so maybe he could put that together. But like Lex Luthor tells Deathstroke that Batman is Bruce Wayne. I also like that when Superman is resurrected, Batman is like sitting next to that cop car, and there are 2 cops right there, like kind of pointing their gun at Superman, and he's going, right. Clark, no, Clark. And I'm going, should you be using his name like right then? So they're just not very good at keeping their identity. So I just assume that Perry White knows who he is, so because everybody else does.
There you go. That's funny.
I'm sure there's probably 1,000 other things we could talk about with this movie, but I feel like we should probably start wrapping it up. So
yeah,
it would be really interesting one day for us to do like a commentary for this movie, but
4-hour long,
4-hour commentary, yeah, exactly. But we'll go right into a rating, and I think I think that I love this movie, so I'm gonna go ahead and just give it 4.5 stars. Yeah.
I'm going to give it 4 out of 5.
Yeah. Which is good. I'm glad you liked it. I was nervous.
My original, like I said, it wasn't really until the second half of the movie where I started really getting on board. Before that, I was going to give it a 3.
Okay.
That was my first when I first had the thought of what am I going to get in this movie, my first thought was 3. Yeah. Not just now when I was watching the movie. Right. By the end of it, I was like, that was definitely a 4.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I'm glad you enjoyed it because I was worried that you and I were going to have different opinions on it, and I was also it makes sense now that you've said this because I know that you didn't watch it in one sitting, and there was one text where you were like, I watched it some today and I thought I'd watched a bunch, but I still have 2 hours left. So I was worried that you were not enjoying it. And I guess you
at that point
weren't as enjoying it as much. Yeah.
Right.
At that point.
I was it's just, I don't know. But it changed.
But yeah, that's good. And 4 out of 5 is for you because you are pretty strict about your ratings. And so 4 out of 5 for you is pretty high praise. So
yeah, most of the Marvel movies, I think I rate 4 out of 5. So this is, to me...
You don't give too many 4.5 out of 5s, and you don't give... Very rarely do you give a 5.
Yeah, it's just really the classic masterpieces that I consider, at least for me.
Yeah.
The nostalgia, the big nostalgia movies, those are 5s.
Batman and Robin, yeah.
Yes, that one's 5.5. It's the one 5.5 I've given.
All those ice puns, that's what really did it. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we'd love to know what you think about Zack Snyder's Justice League. You can always comment on our website, cinemaheroes.com. You can leave a comment on this YouTube video, of course. If you're watching it, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We'd love to hear from you. You can also comment on Facebook, facebook.com/SM and SM Podcast. Or you can tweet at us at Twitter. Of course, at Twitter. Where else would you tweet? At Cinema Heroes is our handle. Same with Instagram. So we'd love to hear from you. Any way you want to reach out to us and let us know what you think about the movie, but also what you think about our little show here. So I think that about wraps it up, though, for this episode. I'm Justin Speck.
I'm John Pelzel.
Thanks for listening. Thanks for subscribing.